All right, come on in and sit down. Barbara Simon is ready to go.
When I was at this class, I would take as a graduate student, they would meet around this hour, and the sugar rush would keep moving. So anyway, Kim's talk was amazing, and it really leads, that last picture that she showed of poop leads right into my talk. So we didn't plan it, maybe Jim did, I'm not sure, but anyway, thank you, Kim, for a great talk and for a wonderful introduction to what I'm going to speak about, which is potential attacks on our elections. There have been multiple warnings. I'm sure you all have seen many of these. When Robert Mueller testified before Congress, the time when he got most animated was when he talked about the multiple systemic efforts to interfere in our elections. We've had similar comments from James Mattis, Secretary of Defense, quick comment to me. I think it does our effort a major disservice to try to make it partisan. Really, that hurts. The Secure Elections Act, which was introduced in the previous Congress, was led by Langford, a very conservative Republican, I think, Oklahoma, and Klobuchar. And they were doing a dog and pony show going around talking about how important it is to secure our elections. There are members of both parties who care about this, and we need their help. So please, don't attack their targets. So for example, the Senate Intelligence Committee in a bipartisan report, said the Department of Homeland Security says that the Russian searches done alphabetically probably included all 50 states, and consisted of research on general election-related web pages, voter ID information, election system software, and election security companies. Now, as other people have said, I think this is stuff you already know, they claim that they say there's no evidence that it exists of votes having been changed, and that's true. On the other hand, we don't know if they've been changed or not because the proper investigation changed. We don't know if they weren't changed either. We also know that many countries are capable of attacks. We had a great picture of Putin at the end of the last talk. We know about Russian attacks. We've been warned that Russia is back and will be back in 2020. China is certainly capable of attacks. North Korea, of course, that wonderful, they didn't like the interview, so they went after Sony. And most recently, as of yesterday, Microsoft announced that they had identified attacks and breaches of emails and addresses belonging to U.S. presidential campaigns and government officials and journalists. That was in the Washington Post yesterday, subsequently followed up by an article in the New York Times saying that the target was the Trump campaign. So, now again, this is stuff that most of you know. And then the second myth, that there are so many different types of systems it's impossible to rig an election, and others have talked about that, but nonetheless, if you just think about the Electoral College, you don't need to rig all the machines in the whole country. You need to focus on a few key states, and probably in those states, a few key districts. So you don't need to change everything. So these are myths that have been repeated many times, sometimes by people who should know better.
Like Obama, for instance.
I'm not going to name names. So I'm going to just give a quick history of how we got here, because where we are is wrong. And I think that if there's anything that we all agree about, it's wrong. What we are talking about, we've been talking about since the early 2000s, most of the time. And, there's a place for computers in our voting systems, by the way. I believe there is, but they've been misused, and this is why we find ourselves in the situation we're in today. So computer science got involved in the early, like in the 1990s. Just a few quick names: Peter Neumann and Rebecca Mercury were warning about these issues. They were ignored. David Jefferson, who's sitting somewhere back there, was involved in California, doing some work in 1999 for the California Secretary of State on internet voting. And then in 2000, President Clinton asked the National Science Foundation to investigate internet voting in the U.S. He brought together, so the NSF brought together a panel of election officials, social scientists, and computer scientists. Voting sounds really terrific. You can vote from home in your pajamas, and I thought that was a really cool idea. Fortunately, there were people in that panel who knew a lot better than I did, and I quickly became disabused with that notion. Unfortunately, there are people who still feel that way. We issued a report saying that internet voting was a significant risk to the integrity of the voting process and should not be implemented in the foreseeable future. And then in 2000, most of you know, the Health America Vote Act was passed with little to no input from technologists. That's an example of it bringing in computers and using them incorrectly. California started purchasing paperless machines back in 2003, and David Dill, who's a computer science professor at Stanford, found his signatures, which were of course ignored. So I was involved in, I guess, around that time. David Dill and I, both went down to Santa Clara County to testify, actually on a couple of occasions, before the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, because they were considering buying paperless voting machines in Santa Clara County. Actually, before we went down, David and I went and met with Jim Neal, who was one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, and he showed us the state book, which had all these focus groups, talking about how much they liked all the different systems. There was not a word about security, nothing. And we talked to him, and we were able to convince him that it was a bad idea to buy paperless machines. But we didn't talk to the whole board, everybody. This is one of many examples where I feel we were naive, where I know I was naive. And we thought if we just got, and before that happened, I think this was the same year, there was a row of computer scientists sitting in the front, waiting to testify. Before then, they had all the vendors coming in, and the vendors were given plenty of time to talk about their wares and how great they were and so on. Each of us was given 90 seconds. And this was a very impressive group of people who were waiting to testify. Again, we didn't succeed. We lost 2-3, so we got a second vote on our paper, but we lost 2-3. We did get the Santa Clara Board of Supervisors to add to the contract that if California ever required paper, that the vendor would have to pay to retrofit the systems. And that is in fact what happened. So Santa Clara County benefited from us even though they didn't listen to us. In 2004, the Hopkins Rice report came out. They looked at the debug machine. They found tons of problems with it. There was a single key in the source code to encrypt all the data, for example, and you could just go and read it. It's F2654HT4. So if you've got your hands on the source code, you could basically get into the machine and change your codes. So again, inappropriate use of technology. Quick, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, good. So again, I'm afraid I'm going to skip over some of these things. We had Florida 2002, which passed the American Vote Act. Just one quick comment from this slide. These machines were sold to election officials by vendor promises, and again, Kim spoke a lot. Running an election is exhausting. I hope most of you have had experience being poll workers. I was dead tired afterwards. And the election officials had more work to do than we had. So it's really exhausting. So I can understand that appeal. They were federally certified. There was a deadline for spending the money in the Health America Vote Act, and there was a gold rush mentality because people wanted to have the latest and the greatest so they could show their citizens that they had done the best thing for money. Early use of computers in voting, again, there were a lot of these paperless voting machines where it was typically a touch-screen machine which displayed the result, display, record, and tabulate the vote. Even in the back of the early days, there were calibration issues where people would say, I touched the button for candidate A and candidate B lit up. And what's kind of interesting about that is that I think sometimes people conclude from that the election was rigged. And I have to say, and I'm sure the computer scientists sitting in the audience will agree with me, you don't know which candidate got the vote. And that's not a good thing, in any case, certainly not for voting machines. They had continuous roll thermal printed paper, like what you get at the gas station, if it's fade in the heat, hard to read was typically under transparent plastic, which made it even harder to read. There was an MIT study, which I think Rich referred to in his talk, where a few people bothered to check these, they're called voter verified paper audit trails, VPATs, you probably all know that. They didn't bother to check if they validated the vote. That was on these DREs with VPATs. There were also voter mark paper systems where the voter manually marks the ballot, which of course is what everybody's talking about here. Typically counted by scanners, and something that I think a lot of people, I know everybody here knows this, but I think a lot of people don't know that scanners are computers. And because scanners are, if they were too sensitive, there could be a stray mark which would lead the scanner to think that you overvoted. If they weren't sensitive enough, it might miss your vote. So these are problems with the early scanners. I think the later scanners are better. If there are long lines at the polls and the scanner is down, or people just don't want to wait in line, with paper ballots, you can deposit it in a ballot box at the polling place. And that's something you could not do with DREs. You can't do it with ballot marking devices either. So what we should not do? We should not have internet voting, and that includes cell phones and blockchains, and I'm going to talk about both. So this is a very old slide, some of you may have seen it before. What are these cabinets on? They've all been hacked. And there are lots and lots, I mean, I could make several slides like this, but I did the DNC, the Podesta emails, and I've actually heard that the RNC was also hacked, but they didn't release that information. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that. But I mean, there are lots more, so this is just a partial list. And to state the obvious, how can underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced local election officials with little to no computer proficiency, computer security expertise, protect their servers in an internet-based election from well-financed adversaries, foreign countries, political operatives, and rogue hackers, when major corporations can't protect their systems? So, just to define what we mean by internet voting, it's the return of a voted ballot over the internet via web or email attachment. Emails can be years back when an election official said, we don't do internet voting, we have to vote by email. And you know, really, I mean, I understand that people don't understand, you know, not everybody's a computer scientist, right? So we have, one of the issues that we have to educate people about what these things all mean. So again, you can use a personal computer, a smartphone, a smart tablet, and so on. There is research that's ongoing to use crypto to try to make internet voting secure and reliable and accountable. But as of now, prominent cryptographers like Ron Invest oppose implementing crypto-based internet voting for the foreseeable future. Vulnerabilities for internet voting, authentication, how do you authenticate the person at the other end? Is that what you see on the screen may not be what goes out over the internet. In fact, it may not be what goes to the memory of the DRE or any other machine, because computers consist of separate components that communicate with each other, and you can have something in the middle that will change the results. So just because your home computer shows the right candidates, that doesn't mean that's what goes out over the internet. Denial of service attacks can prevent real ballots from reaching election officials. I was in New York when Hurricane Sandy hit, and fortunately I was staying with some good friends in their condo, because I couldn't get back. I couldn't get out. And for 2 days I tried to reach United Airlines, and I couldn't get through. And that was not an attack. It was a denial of service. It wasn't an attack. Everybody was trying to get everybody sent at the same time. Many won't get through. Or if if the bad guys are sending tons and tons of communications, it won't get through. Penetration attacks on the voter service can change, on the vote server can change results. So on the election official service can change results. And of course, with internet voting, there's no paper ballots, you can't audit it, because you can't be sure that the recorded votes are correct. And then you have the issue with any kind of remote voting, of vote buying and selling and voter coercion. So that's true. With internet voting, you can facilitate it in some ways by setting up a website to pay voters if they vote the way you want. But any kind of remote voting, you have this problem, including voting from home, by mail. So regulations for the internet, there are none. Accountability, and there's no ability to recount. So the National Institute of Science and Technology was asked to develop standards, and they threw up their hands. They produced reports, and they said they couldn't develop standards because malware on the voters' personal computers posed a serious threat that could compromise the security or integrity of the voters' ballots. So we don't know how to do it. That's the problem. Nonetheless, we're doing it. The internet voting is occurring in the United States in about 30 states where military and overseas voters can return voted ballots over the internet. Fortunately, this isn't a large number, but it's too large in my opinion. There was an act, in 2009, Congress passed the MOVE Act, which requires that all my blank ballots, not the blank ballot, print it out, fill it out by hand, stick it in an envelope, and mail it back. And in the case of military voters overseas, there's free expedited mail return of the voted ballot. So, in my opinion, internet voting is a solution in search of a problem. And there are claims that many people have been making, especially recently, about why we need internet voting. The idea that it's going to increase voter participation, that's something that a lot of people are concerned about, and it'll increase participation by young people. We have no evidence that either is true. There was a major British Columbia study done a few years ago. They spent $400,000. Admittedly, it was Canadian dollars, which are less than US dollars, but it was still a lot of money. In the province of Ontario, municipalities are allowed to conduct internet-based voting. No, again, I think that's crazy, but that happens. And they've had multiple elections held in Canada in these municipalities, and multiple municipalities. So they can eliminate the novelty factor, like the first time you do it, the fact that different votes, different elections have different responses, because they had enough data. And based on that data, they concluded that internet voting does little to nothing to increase voter participation, and it doesn't increase participation by young people. Instead, what happens is the same people who voted before vote over the internet. That's what they found. Blockchains are being hyped now as, again, a way to term, but it's a bit distributed data structure. Issues of blockchains, you have colluding co-owners who can determine which transactions to add, including possibly false transactions. You could have outside attackers who penetrate the service who may be able to manipulate the transactions. There is no central authority to police the activities. And if you have a single owner blockchain, which is likely with voting, that eliminates the checks and balances that blockchains do have in their case of multiple owners. And all of the other internet vulnerabilities still apply. So,
Barbara, I think you go over this more slowly and carefully, because a lot of people say, blockchain's the solution, and I personally would love to have just a more clear understanding of why it's not, and what to say to them.
David Jefferson has really studied this problem. I mean, I can go over this slide again, or we can post the slides.
All right, you're just going so fast, I'm sorry.
Sorry. All right, I will go over this slowly. Blockchains, distributed data structure. Colluding co-owners can determine which transactions. So the idea is you've got this data structure, you want to add transactions to it, like the votes. And you can collude to not add certain votes or to add false votes. So that's one of the problems with blockchains. Outsiders can attack the servers to manipulate the transactions. There is no central authority to police the activities. And again, with blockchain, with voting, with the official or the vendor. And with one owner, the checks and balances you get from multiple owners disappear. And again, I don't know where David Jefferson is, but he's around, you should definitely talk to him, because if you want to go into more detail about this, he has really made a study of it. And then all of the internet vulnerabilities are stuff. In fact, I think David's going to be speaking tomorrow on a panel, but I'm not mistaken. So you can grab him then enough before. There he is. Mr. Blockchain. The National Academies of Science did a study in 2018, I think, which were you on that study? Oh, well, anyway, a bunch of prominent computer scientists were, and the statement that they issued was, in the particular case of internet voting, blockchain methods do not redress the security issues associated with internet voting. Again, David has a couple of papers he's written on this topic, and one of them includes this quote, but you can also go to the National Academy Votes, or some people pronounce it Ballots, which is pushing blockchain voting. And again, as I said in the beginning, we don't want to make this the election integrity partisan issue, but I will say that with votes, this company has a lot of links to the Democratic Party. So just to remind you that this is not like one side is good and one side is bad. That's not the case. So with votes, there's no federal or state certification. They claim they don't need it because they're not a voting system, because they don't tabulate the votes, but they collect the votes. They basically do blockchain. There's no disclosed source. There's no open testing by third-party experts. There's no testing of mock elections. Some of you may recall in 2010, Washington, D.C. wanted to have internet voting, but before they moved to that, they had a mock election. So that's the sort of thing that should be done on a widespread rate. And I should add, even if you do a test and someone doesn't break into it, that doesn't mean it's secure. But the fact that someone did break into it made it clear that it's not secure. So Ballots has done none of that. They've had no testing. They claim to have done security audit, but nothing has been made public. Nonetheless, nonetheless, West Virginia has been using and continues to use votes for overseas voters since the 2018 primaries and midterms. The city and county of Denver just brought them in. As I say, they're funded by Trust Philanthropies, and which again there are a number of people involved that who are least in the Democratic Party. We have a solution to this problem of, there are lots of problems that have been discussed here. This is one problem where we have a solution. The solution is voter marked paper ballots, voter verified paper ballots, strong chain of custody, and statistically sound manual post-election ballot audits called political voting audits. We need well-designed paper ballots. The text must be easily readable. This is the ballots I'm talking about, just the paper ballots, easily readable by the voters. Bad ballot design may change the election outcome, and we know this well. We have reason to believe this has happened. Of course, there's the infamous butterfly ballot from Palm Beach, Florida, that may have changed the outcome of the 2000 presidential race. And more recently, again in Florida, Broward County, you can see over 26,000 fewer votes cast for Senate than cast for governor. And it was far higher than the rest of the state in terms of undervotes. So the undervotes in Broward County were exceptionally high, and for other races, farther down ticket, they had more votes. So, again, we need voter marked paper ballots. Louisiana will be the only state in 2020 that is totally paperless, which is good news. But there are still a number of paperless jurisdictions in Kansas, Kentucky, New Jersey, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Texas. Texas has quite a few. And we hope not Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania in 2018 and before, 83% of the population voted on paperless machines. So talk about swing state in the 2016 election. Machines, the paperless machines with paper-based systems. There's controversy about the kinds of systems he's replacing them with, but they will have paper. So there are basically two kinds of paper, as you've been hearing. There's the hand-marked paper ballots, which are widely used and inexpensive, and then there are ballot marking devices, which has been a lot of discussion about this here, so I won't go into it now. I will just note that both types are tabulated by scanners. So we need a strong chain of custody of the ballots, and this is something that I think we don't discuss often enough. There need to be inspectors from both major parties. We need to have hard-to-forge seals for the ballot boxes so that we can check for tampering. There needs to be custody laws. This is just a partial list, by the way. This is not, by any means, a complete list. There need to be surveillance videos in any while tabulated for Board of Elections and when audited or recounted. And we really need to focus on this because if we have everything else right, if we have hand-marked paper ballots, if we have risk-limiting audits, but this part doesn't work right, if somebody can get in and change the ballots, all bets are off. We need post-election ballot audits, and with post-election ballot audits, the preliminary results must be reported before the audits, and the audits must be completed before the results are certified, otherwise they're kind of meaningless. You need to have manual counts, you need to have random selection of ballots, and we need risk-limiting audits that have been recommended by the Presidential Commission on Election Administration, the National Academies of Science, the State Intelligence Committee, and they were developed by UC statistics professor Phil Stark, who said, Ben will be the next talk. So you see, the way Kim led into my talk, I'm thinking of Phil Stark. So finally, my concluding talk is, we can validate 2020, but it's going to be damn hard. We need to focus on the swing states that have or will have paper ballots. We need to have statewide risk-limiting audits. And in states where we can't do them under law, what would be great if we can manage that, should discover if the results are correct or not. We should be able to validate the results if they're correct, and correct them if they're wrong. And that's what we need. And it has the benefit both of catching any hacking of the election results, and if a candidate loses and claims that the results were rigged, we would be able to prove that they weren't rigged because we've got evidence-based election that shows that they were not rigged. And again, I think that's really important because there's all this talk about how people are not going to accept the results of the election. And that's a very dangerous thing for our democracy. So we need to do as much as we can in terms of both getting new laws passed, but we probably can't get them passed before 2020. So we're going to have to improvise and do the very best we can with these risk-limiting audits. We will need the cooperation of local election officials. Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering if people in your space are aware of the recently released 2020 Cyber Warfare Report. There was an article by Zach Goffman in Forbes magazine.
I haven't read it.
I won't take up people's time, but I think people should be aware of it. They're talking about the cyber tools that the Russians are developing with 6 different segments of their government. The thing that stood out to me was that all 6 segments of their government built from scratch their own code. And we believe that the attacks that they'll be able to carry out will be rolling attacks with 6 different layers
Goes against that. We can't prevent our elections from being attacked. We can't say our elections are safe. What we have to be able to do is to recover from attack. And that's why we need these paper ballots and these community audits, because they will allow us to recover. Because we just can't guarantee safety. It's just too hard to problem.
Barbara, it's off the main point, but I want to go back to the partisan, nonpartisan, which, has sort of been thematic, even though it's not the main point. And when you brought it up the first time, there was a certain smattering of applause, and I read from that there's a lot of disquiet around this. And I feel that personally, being a forensics person for 17 years, I know what I've got in front of me. And it says it's all going in one direction, or virtually all going. But the Republicans will not allow anyone to kill the goose that's laying their golden eggs. So the reality, it feels kind of coy to talk about being nonpartisan. It might be good for fundraising, it might be good for publicity, but it feels at odds with a certain experiential reality. How do you resolve that? How can you go about saying, all right, we're going to be a nonpartisan organization, or we're going to deal with this on a nonpartisan way? That means we're not going to bring any forensics in. That means we're not going to bring any politicians' behavior in. What do you got left, other than something that's sort of abstract and ideal?
I just would agree with you. I know that there's been a lot of voter disenfranchisement, and I know that has been primarily done by one of the political parties. I get that. Republicans, the Senate Intelligence Committee, I think the Republicans on the Senate Intelligence Committee get it. They are concerned. And the fact that we know that it was just revealed that Iran was trying to attack the Trump campaign, maybe that'll wake people up. And I think that's where we hope, because if you're going to count on the Democrats to fix everything, first of all, there have been some Democrats who've been quite bad, I have to tell you. And second of all, there have been some Republicans who've been good. So if we're going to make this partisan, we're going to lose, in my opinion. So that's my view. I think it's counterproductive. I think where there are bad players, you should call them out. I completely agree with you on that. I think the voter disenfranchisement is an abomination. That's not what I'm working on, but I really.
Thank you, Barbara. And yeah, this sequence of speakers was pre-planned.